Welcome to FO Talks. With me is Olawole Fajusigbe. He's a legal practitioner with over 15 years of experience navigating complex and regulatory landscape in Nigeria. He's joining us from Lagos. Welcome, Wale.
Hello, everyone. Nice to have you. Thank you for having me here.
Not a problem. Let's get right in. So, for our global audience that watches Fair Observer, they might be unfamiliar with what's really happening in Nigeria right now. Can you tell us why so many mass kidnappings are happening so frequently?
Um, well, how will I say it? In Nigeria, we're battling with a lot of security issues, dealing with insurgents, splinter groups, religious groups on many fronts. So maybe if the reason why kidnappings is happening is maybe it's eating, maybe it's a period, or maybe just as some people call terrorists, they just want to foment instability
Hmm.
in the country or in the state so that people don't feel safe. And
Hmm.
but the major issue about it is kidnapping has been going on in Nigeria for a while and nothing has really been done. So because it's a highly profitable enterprise, a lot of people actually see it as a source of income,
Hmm.
low risk, and a lot of people are paying ransoms. And because the government has not really done anything to deter people doing it, it's now become a normal thing. So that's why the way it is right now.
Right. Well, in the last 30 days or a month, over 400 children have been kidnapped, and this has happened across Nigeria. Of course, the most shocking was the story from of 300 students and 12 teachers from St. Mary's Catholic School in Niger State. Um, can you tell us the latest update on that? Because there were reports that some children had escaped, but then the coverage on that has almost died down. So, can you tell us what's going on the ground?
Okay, I'll just summarize what happened in November. In November,
Hmm.
in the period of about 6 days, we had some damaging things. A brigadier general was killed in Borno State. Then there was a kidnapping in Kebbi State of 24 girls. As of today, the girls have been released, but as usual, the government doesn't say were they released, did they get the kidnappers or whatever. Then the one you mentioned about the Niger State incident, as at the last check, there were 303 students and 12 teachers who were kidnapped. There were reports that about 50 of them escaped. But even as at yesterday, the national security advisor was talking somewhere in public and he said the children will be released and they will be found. But circumstances have not been provided, details have not been provided. To be
Hmm.
fair to the government, usually in times like this, they usually choose not to disclose sensitive information so as not to tip off the kidnappers that they are close to getting them. But the way it is, it's scary because one is wondering what exactly is happening, and the numbers 253, it's really scary. But that's the position it's right now.
Right, but do we know who are the main actors behind these kidnappings?
And well, the 300 students that were kidnapped, nobody has claimed responsibility for it. And the truth about it is, if you've studied some of the insurgents unrest in Nigeria, they address Boko Haram.
Hmm.
And Boko Haram had some splinter groups to ISWAP, that's the Islamic State for the West Africa province. And apart from indigenous groups, some people just gather themselves together and say, oh, this seems like a profitable venture. And they go in and kidnap people and get ransom. So there's nobody really claiming responsibility for it per se.
That was actually going to be my next question. Sure, this kidnapping is still in the news, but as you rightfully mentioned, kidnappings have been ongoing in Nigeria for almost half a decade now. But can we go deeper into why this happens? Is it more about ideology, as you mentioned, groups like Boko Haram and Islamic State, or is it about poverty? Because you also said that these groups are asking for ransom and people are willing to pay, or is it more just about just an overall collapse of local governance and a failure on part of the government, or is it a bit of all 3?
I think it's a combination of all three.
Hmm.
Now, I was going to mention in the beginning that the kidnappings take place most times in the northwest, north central part of Nigeria, which is bordered by Chad, Niger, and some other countries. And there have been complaints of porous borders, where people could just come into Nigeria and live in. There's also been complaints of illegal arms trafficking. So I think all those combinations, coupled with poverty, somebody's growing up in a village who really doesn't have a future or hope for tomorrow, and he sees an opportunity to maybe improve himself by engaging in illicit crime, it could actually work in that person's favor. So it could be like weaponization of poverty. And because there's a huge unemployment issue,
Mhm.
there's a large pool of ready recruits ready to actually go into this venture. For ideology, I think it's neither here nor there because we had Boko Haram and we had a lot of people with ideology. But ideology is something that you can't really put a stamp on because someone may say, I'm following this ideology, but when you get deep to the tenets of it, it's just greed,
Mm.
whatever it is. For the lack of governance structure, because as I said, most of these issues are in other states and other places. So government institutions or law enforcement agents are in a substantial number to be able to deter these would-be kidnappers are not in sufficient numbers.
Mhm.
So most times these criminals are emboldened and they feel that they can actually get there and do whatever they want without anybody stopping them.
Right. Well, Nigeria does have one of the largest militaries in West Africa, if not all of Africa. So you've mentioned about the border region with Chad and other countries. Why can't the government just deploy more troops and more security agencies in the region and prevent these kind of kidnappings?
I think the issue is, the conflict that we are in now is asymmetric, it's not symmetric. You
Hmm.
can't identify the other people. You can't identify their location. Just like we are talking about the children that have been kidnapped. We can't say that they are in a specific location and maybe it's just to go and invade or capture. So because the nature of the conflict is asymmetric, it's actually hampering the effects of the military or the law enforcement agents to go after them. Also, there have been talk of collusion or corruption. The 24 students who were kidnapped in Kebbi State, there was a report that they had some foreknowledge and that the security officials were withdrawn a few hours before the kidnap took place. Unfortunately, up till today, the commander in charge, no action has been taken. In fact, everybody is confused because people are wondering, do you have hands in this? What
Hmm.
exactly is happening? So people are wondering what is happening. So I don't think it's a function of the size of the military, but it's a function of what are we actually doing to the crime, kidnap, and protect the people, because that's what the people require.
Right. And how are ordinary Nigerians reacting? Of course, I'm not even talking about the families that have been affected, but are Nigerians upset with the leadership, with President Bola Tinubu and governors and ministers of the state where this has happened? Is there no pushback against the government on this?
There's pushback. Well, as a father, I have two children, and I cannot imagine what I'll be going through right now. I read a disturbing news report sometime last week that two of the parents of the children passed away. One
Hmm.
had a heart attack, one had some complications with high blood pressure. So immediately the news was given to them, passed away. I still read a report earlier today that a lot of the parents are complaining that the government is not carrying them along. They don't know what's happening and they are scared and they are worried and they're like, what exactly is happening? The government is facing pressure. I'm sure you'd have heard about what the President of the United States, Donald Trump, said a few weeks ago when he labeled Nigeria as a country of particular concern about Christian genocide, whatever.
Hmm.
The government is facing pressure, but the issue there is that there is the pressure, there's no way to actually leverage accountability on the government per se, because the government will say we are doing something, we are doing this, and the government can point to some successes. The children in Kebbi were released. We don't know what happened, whether a ransom were paid. There was also a kidnapping in the church in Ilorin. Those people were released. 50 people have escaped. So the government can say they are doing something. And also, I was writing about this on LinkedIn. The government actually closed 47 secondary schools in the northwest and the northeast, which I was not happy about because that's like accepting defeat.
Hmm.
But even if you close 47 schools, those are the public schools. All the private schools will also close down, and the schools were closed indefinitely. The schools are not going to be open this year. That's
Mm.
the next thing. So the government is like, people are asking, we can't go on like this. Something has to be done. And the question is, don't just tell us you rescued the people. What
Mhm.
happened? Have you found the den of the kidnappers? Have you broken them? Have you cut off their source of arms? What
Mhm.
exactly are you doing? And the last thing I'll make on this point, kidnapping 300 people is not something that happens in 5 minutes or 10 minutes. You have to plan logistics, you have to get vehicles, you have to go to the place. So whether we like that operation took a minimum of about 1 to 2 hours. So the question people are asking within those 1 or 2 hours, what happened? Were there no law enforcement agents? At least what exactly happened, and why is it made to seem as if these kidnappers are so sophisticated or whatever it is? So the government is facing heat, and they would have to keep answering these tough questions as they go
Mhm.
on.
Well, you pointed out something very important, that the kidnapping is not just a security problem. It's an economic problem as well, but it's also psychologically very taxing on ordinary families, and ordinary Nigerians. Now you're a legal practitioner, but you also work with civil society actors. You work with NGOs. Um, how how are Nigerians even coping with such security failures? Are they looking at only the government for answers, or are they trying to do things on their own as well?
It's, I have a friend who always says every Nigerian is an extension of government, because
Hmm.
most Nigerians believe they provide the basic utilities for themselves. But the only thing we can't really provide is security.
Hmm.
Because even if you're going to pick up arms, which is illegal, if you are an individual, how far can you go defending yourself against a force or whatever? So people are scared, but that's why we have a government. And that's
Hmm.
why there's this theory of social contract, meaning we give up some of our rights to the government, and the government is supposed to protect us. And so people are asking questions that what exactly is happening? Provide a specific answer. I'm in Lagos, and even just last week, governors in the south had a meeting where they were discussing, because they were like, they didn't want the violence in the north to escalate down to the south, and we were thinking of talking about strategies and whatnot. And even in the last few weeks, people have been talking, they have been talking of having a state police, because
Hmm.
the police in Nigeria is federal. People have been uniting talks for a state police, that this will serve things like this, that all states will be able to have their police or law enforcement agents, so that they can actually deter this and work on it. So, but the question I have is, the rhetoric is becoming too much. Meanwhile, the lives of people who are suffering this are affected every day and in any way. So I really don't know how they want to proceed, but they need to do something. They don't just need to be seen to be trying to do something. They need to do something that makes fast.
Right. Well, you have an extensive background in conflict resolution, and you worked with in areas where conflict has been prevalent in Nigeria. From your experience, can you tell us some community level solutions that have actually worked in Nigeria, and maybe you have some ideas on how to prevent mass kidnappings in the future?
Okay, for me, I always say the best way out is dialogue,
Hmm.
even if it's between two people or between 100 people. And it shouldn't be dialogue where you have like a third party come to say you guys should do this. It should be dialogue between the opposing parties. There are some historical based conflicts based on land. We've been having herders and farmer clashes. But dialogue that is facilitated by traditional rulers, which are closer to traditional and religious rulers, which are closer to the people, where both parties sit down and try to find a win-win solution. Always the best way for me. It's dialogue. Now, dialogue may not work with the kidnappers because that was another criminal whatever. But the question is, for me, it hampers on two things. It's development and also enhancing the security architecture in Nigeria. Develop it in a way that if you solve part of the unemployment problem, the recruits that are readily available reduce, and then it becomes tough. So it's like a strategic development plan. Then how do you now solve it? As I said, it goes beyond paying ransoms under the table and coming out to say children have been released. It goes beyond, you have to break up the dens of the people. You have to close the border gaps where people are coming in. You have to close the border gaps where weapons are coming in. Because the report that one of the school was the people came on bikes and they usually come and spray, shoot different type of rounds into the air. So where the security forces are underarmed and ill-equipped, you are not going to be able to face that kind of force or army. So we have to cut off sort of their funding if it's possible, because as I said, the logistics of such an operation, they have to get trucks, they have to get bikes, they have to get petrol, they have to, wherever they are, they have to be eating. Wherever the 250 children are on the first days, they have to be feeding them. So it's not a small operation. So the question is, attack the funding. Who is funding these people? Block off areas of funding and find ways to cut off their string so that in the way you begin to frustrate whatever it is that they are doing. So those are just some of my recommendations for kidnappers. But the other ones I think is dialogue, and it should be indigenous participation. Both parties come, they talk, whatever the problem is, we find a solution and we look for a way to move on.
Wale, very quickly before we go, since you brought up US President Donald Trump, I had to ask you, is there any truth to his claims when he says that there is a genocide happening against Christians in Nigeria?
Okay. I studied a master's in international human rights in 2013, and my thesis was actually on the failure of the international community to prevent genocide. One thing I'll just say quickly, genocide is a complex word because people, ever since people say, oh, there's no genocide, there's genocide, there's no genocide. And I tell people, by the time you start saying if there's a genocide, the question is crimes are occurring. People's rights are being trampled upon. So I always tell people, forget the nomenclature of genocide. People's rights are being trampled upon. People are being killed. What are we going to do about it? Because once we go down the road of genocide, you get people arguing it's not genocide, or it's only one person, it's two. Forget the nomenclature. People are dying. Something needs to be done. That's the way forward.
Right. Well, thank you so much for your insights and for speaking to Fair Observer. Wale, it was truly a pleasure.
Okay, thank you so much for having me with you. Have a lovely day.
Join the conversation at Fair Observer and subscribe to our YouTube channel.